Cindy. Okay, it's time to look at some dangerous stuff.
Okay, so our next piece of fake news is high-speed rail will utilize technology to prevent high-speed train crashes. Well, these trains use the oldest technology that trains have ever used. That's steel wheels on steel tracks, overhead electrical wiring, and the worst part is they're operated by humans. High-speed rail brags that these crashes could not happen because they're using positive train control, which is a system to prevent crashes due to things that could be on the railway. However, a lot of trains use positive train control, and there were nearly 2,000 incidents at rail crossings in 2017. And these incidents caused countless deaths, injuries, property damage, traffic nightmares, and economic loss. There's no such thing as a small train crash. Next. We've got Amtrak in South Carolina. Next. We've got Virginia. Next. We've got the very recent one in Seattle. Next. We've got one in LA to Chicago. Next. We've got Philadelphia. Next. We've got Chatsworth here in our communities. Next. Also Glendale. Next. So if we look at the Creek Fire, it actually mirrored the actual E2 route. The picture on the left shows the tunnel openings in Lakeview Terrace. There's fire. The middle picture is where the bridge and the wires would go over the Big Tahunga Wash. There was a fire. The picture on the right are where the tunnel openings would be in Shadow Hills. Guess what? There was a fire. Next. The high-speed rail route decisions are based on sound engineering principles. Wrong. There are 227 alignments statewide that were eliminated through 2015. And the average number of reasons for a route to be eliminated was about 2.7 reasons, which is a reasonable number. But get this, 14 routes were eliminated due to citizen and electeds' opposition. That's us, right? The number of reasons why E2 should be eliminated is 15. And the number of reasons why E1 should be eliminated are 10. And I mean, I'm not a real whiz at math, but 15 and 10 are a bit more than 2.7. Then they eliminated E3, but they didn't eliminate E2, even though they were the same reasons. It's crazy. So the bottom line is there are more reasons to remove E1 and E2 than any other route in the history of this project. E3 was removed due to overburden, but not E2. SR14 was heavily modified in 2016 due to political pressure. And there's really no acceptable reason to keep E1 and E2 in it any longer. But here they are, they're still there. Next. Next fake news item. Trains create jobs and economic boosts. Okay, your tax dollars are being spent in Northern and Central California. There are no local jobs or economic benefit for us here in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. Did you know that 60% of Californians live in Southern California? Yet the High-Speed Rail Authority spent 92% of your money in Northern and Central California. Now, this is not construction money. This is money given to cities, counties, and other governmental agencies for local projects. So, and they're running out of money. They've got massive budget overruns. There's no more federal funds. There's no private funds. And there's very limited state funds. And, are we going to get our share before those funds run dry? Next. Fake news. Project is making progress. Well, if you consider progress as spending money like crazy, then yeah, they are. But the facts are, this project is a failure financially, scheduling, environmentally, waste of tax dollars, breached public trust. Not 1 inch of track has been laid, and $5 billion has been spent. There's no more federal funding, there's no private funding, there's limited state funding tied to taxes, which is a very inconsistent revenue stream. The ticket prices will not compete with airfare, and the ridership projections they're ridiculous. They say for their first segment, which is only 250 miles from Bakersfield, it's not even Bakersfield, it's north of Bakersfield, to San Jose, they say that they're going to have 11,000 passengers daily. Now, compare that to Burbank Airport, which serves the entire country. They have 11,000 passengers daily. So operationally, the required speeds and times can't be attained. Their management is a complete mess. Their CEO position was open for nearly a year, and they have massive management and contractor turnover. So that concludes my section.
Who knows what's next? Daniel, let's see the next slide and figure it out. Oh, look, it's me. Okay. So high-speed rail always says that these routes go under and not through the forest. They make it sound like there's an entrance on one side of the forest, an exit on the other, and then if you were standing in the middle, you would never know that there's a train underneath, and that is a lie. All of the routes through the Angeles National Forest have multiple impacts on the surface that high-speed rail does not advertise. First, there are construction staging areas that are going to occupy dozens of acres that sit on the border of the Angeles National Forest, the National Monument, the Big Tahunga Wash. Then, and this is a big one, for every 12 miles of tunnel, the high-speed rail needs a power substation in order to provide electricity for the train and all of its ancillary systems. That means that they are going to need to build at least one, if not two, power stations on the floor of the National Forest in order to power this train. They need emergency shafts to provide a means of escape. They need to build roads to accommodate emergency vehicles and access all of these things. All of these are man-made encroachments that high-speed rail will build on the forest floor where none exist now. All of the wildlife, maybe next slide at this point, who knows? Sure, maybe next one even. Great. All of the wildlife, including our endangered species that call this area home, will be jeopardized through loss of habitat, impeded migration patterns, excessive noise, threat of electrocution, or collision with the train, because keep in mind these things run on electric wires that are out and open to the world. In addition to the actual operation of the train, wildlife will suffer through years of construction that's taking place on the forest floor. We also have impacts to our water supply, which is crucial to us. Tunneling jeopardizes critical groundwater sources in the mountains that provide drinking water to Los Angeles. Keep in mind that when Metro built the Red Line, they completely dewatered Runyon Canyon. We cannot afford to allow that to happen here. If you were here 3 years ago, you might remember that Kristen Sabo presented information up here on the various springs that we have here in the mountains, including Oak Spring, which is a historic headwater to the LA River. The high-speed rail officials came up and responded that they had no idea those springs were even there, and that was really good information to know. Next slide, I think. Fake news that high-speed rail is green and good for the environment. Specifically, their claim is that ridership is reducing carbon emissions from people who would otherwise be driving cars. Now, unfortunately, what they don't tell you is how they reach this misleading conclusion. They start their calculations on day one, when the train starts carrying passengers from point A to point B, wherever those points might be. Therefore, basically, if even just one person rides the train, they claim they're reducing carbon emissions because that person would otherwise be taking a car. What they intentionally do not factor into their calculations is this: what it takes to construct the system in the first place. And unfortunately, the greenhouse gases that are generated to build the largest construction project in the history of the United States are far greater than what will ever be reduced for the foreseeable future. That's hard to say. The biggest problem is the cement that's needed for construction, because the production of cement is the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Now that means in terms of construction, tunneling is exponentially worse for the environment than at-grade segments because of the cement required to build the tunnels. And for these proposed routes, we're talking about the possibility of a near 30-mile section of tunnel, somewhere between 30 and 60 feet wide, that are lined entirely with cement. That's just for our little project section, let alone the remaining 492 miles that are supposed to connect San Francisco to Los Angeles. Now, the California Legislative Analyst's Office, that's the state's nonpartisan policy advisor, concluded that if high-speed rail meets its ridership projections, and that's a big if, then, quote, construction and operation of the system will emit more greenhouse gas emissions than it would reduce for approximately the first 30 years. That's a low estimate. Researchers at UC Berkeley concluded it would take 71 years of high-speed rail operations to save enough greenhouse gas emissions to negate the emissions that were produced to construct the train in the first place. And if ridership is lower than high-speed rail is predicting, it will never achieve that recoupment. Let's see the next slide, Daniel. Don't think this is me. Okay.
How much water is that concrete going to use?
Too much, more than we have.
All right, Kelly's only getting a brief break here. She's going to be back in a minute, and she's got an incredible video piece that she hasn't shown anybody. And then there's one more really big emotional grab toward the end of the meeting. So if you're even thinking of leaving, you're making a big mistake. Okay, so I've already covered some of the stuff here. We have a guy on our board in the Shadow Hills Property Owners Association named Carlos George. And Carlos, he is a shock and awe kind of guy. And he keeps telling us, you guys are playing way too nice. You're being too polite. You're playing to people's intellect. You got to grab them. You got to hit them harder. So we came up with the idea of showing you what could happen here. You've already seen some of those cut and cover trench drawings. Those are pretty nasty. I want to show you a little bit about where the tunnel openings would be here, and then we have a great piece about what's already happening up in the Central Valley, just to plant the seed, a strong one, that this still could happen here. This project is still alive. You see in the middle, that's the piece of tunnel boring equipment, and you see 4 different locations. In the upper left corner, I believe that is the area, it was shown in smoke just a little while ago. It's at the top of Wheatland, right above Foothill Boulevard. Okay, so if you came off the freeway and just drove up Wheatland until the road ended, that's where 2 80-foot diameter tunnel openings would be, at the top of Wheatland. If you go to the other side of there's that tall bluff in Shadow Hills. We call it the A Tower. There's a big power tower up there, and that's where the 2 tunnel openings would be in Shadow Hills. If you go into the bottom left of the screen, you see Sun Valley. That is what's known as the Vulcan Materials Pit, the Vulcan landfill. That landfill is now a couple of 100 feet deep. Now, there's a chance that by the time high-speed rail ever got here, the thing might be filled up again. There could be, a baseball stadium there for all we know. But if they went according to the plans that they have right now, they would have to come out of the ground about 150 feet down. Okay, so below street level, but above the bottom of the pit. So imagine 2 big tunnel openings in the wall of that quarry on the near the corner of Glen Oaks and Peoria. That is 677 feet away from Stonehurst Elementary School. Not only would there be 2 tunnel openings there, but they want to put a 125-acre construction and staging area in that location for all their equipment, all their trucks, all their employees, etc. When we talked about environmental justice earlier, when that environmental justice zone was created, and it was created by, at the time, Councilman Tony Cardenas, and I was actually involved in drafting the language for it. They never envisioned anything like this. They created this environmental justice area through most of Sun Valley to prevent additional landfills, additional quarries. They were familiar with certain types of onerous businesses. They had no clue that the high-speed rail folks were planning a 125-acre staging area, followed by not only the 2 tunnel openings in the one wall, but what happens when you come through the wall? You got to go somewhere. They're going to go through 2 more tunnel openings on the other side of the quarry. And then they would go cut and cover through sort of where the new Starbucks is, where the 5 freeway entrance is, what used to be Bob's Big Boy, Dimian's, right down through there until they meet up on San Fernando Road. So that would be cut and cover through that area as well. Okay? So, and then down in the bottom right-hand corner, that is a picture taken in the upper northwest or northeast corner of Pacoima. It's just below the Hanson Dam Golf Course. If you've ever driven down Osborne, you know that there are some bluffs up there. It may be called Hanson Hills, or I think that may be the name of the community there. Okay, I'm getting thumbs up that we got the name of the community right. So the roads as they run, there's Osborne, and then you have Montague, and then you have Branford, I think, in that sequence. There would be 2 tunnel openings coming right through there, and that's a mixed community. There's industrial buildings there, but it's zoned really weird. There's houses in there too. So it's mixed. And then it would come down to San Fernando Road, and it would run along the existing Metrolink line. So these tunnel openings could be in these 4 locations. This just wanted to highlight again that it still can go through the Big Tonga Wash, which is now burned, but there's still a perennial stream in there named Haynes Canyon Creek. And if we ever do get rain, as you know, there is still a lot of water flowing through. That's where all the trails are. And you can imagine for a 5 to 10 year construction period, your trails would be closed. Your access for whatever purposes you enjoy that Big Tonga area would be closed. This is the area in Sun Valley that would be changed dramatically under both the existing plans and even some future plans for Sun Valley. That's the bike trail that they just spent millions of dollars on. They'd have to tear it out to put in the new train line, then they'd probably have to put it back in, and you see the grade crossings that are there. So Sun Valley, Pacoima are still very much in the crosshairs of the plan. What we have there is just to, again, drill home that we're talking about Stonehurst Elementary School being 677 feet. That is the class of 1967 in the bottom corner of the photograph. But what you see outlined in green is the footprint of that 125-acre quarry that is just on the corner of Peoria and Glen Oaks, and then highlighted in pink is where Stonehurst Elementary is. Now we're going to take you on a ride to Central Valley. Here's Kelly.
Danielle, can you play video number 2, please? So, one thing that I keep hearing around town is, oh, high-speed rail is never going to happen here. I would love nothing more than for this project to never happen here. But it bothers me that because high-speed rail has been quiet in our area for a couple of years, that many of our residents have this air of complacency that they can just sit around and do nothing, when in reality, this project is happening right now and not very far from here. I thought that our residents here in the foothills needed a bit of a wake-up call, so on Friday, I drove up to the Central Valley. On the screen behind me is a bridge that they're building in Fresno. Now, you might note that it stops in the air on one end and stops in the air on the other end and doesn't actually connect to anything on either side, but that's a separate story. That construction is going on today. I went up there to meet with some residents who have had their home by the High-Speed Rail Authority, to ask them about their experiences, to learn what they went through and what this project has done to their communities. The video that you're going to see next was taken on Friday in the communities of Hanford and Corcoran, just north of Bakersfield. Now, what struck me, aside from the fact that their area is flat and we have the mountains, was how much their communities are like ours. People have nice houses, they have an acre or so of land with some horses, they know their neighbors, they're involved in the community. They did not want to move. They did not have a choice. The folks who you're going to hear but don't see are still in negotiations with high-speed rail, so they could not be seen on camera. Please watch this video and listen to their stories, and keep in mind while you are watching that this could still happen here. this could still happen to you. Daniel, video number 3.
Before they did the appraisal and everything, I sat down and I went what I paid for the property and all the improvements I had done over 30 years. And it was almost right at $1 million. And I gave that to them. I said, here's what I got invested in this year, in this property in these years. I said, so you take that in consideration when you offer me anything. They came back with,
Half, I think.
oh no, not even half.
Oh, it was less than half?
340,000 or something. And I looked at that and I looked at them and I said, is that with or without medicated Vaseline? You know, I said, because you said fair market value, not a royal screwing. You know, and I said, you know, no. I said, you seem to forget, we don't want to move. You want our property.
You guys in your area, you have a lot of horse area. See, here's the trouble that we ran into. When they were looking at a comparable, all they had to look at was the house. They didn't have to look at how much acreage we had. They didn't have to look at the fact that we had a shop. If we had a barn, they didn't have to look at the fact that we had a barn. They were sending us comparables that were in a subdivision on a quarter of an acre with the house our size. And so I was trying to tell them, where are we going to put our horses? Where's my husband going to put his shop? Well, we don't have to worry about that. All we have to do is give you comparable housing. My husband was born and always has lived in Corcoran. His entire family lives here. We both work here. All of our kids go to school here. So we didn't want to leave Corcoran. And so the only option was to find something close to it or to rebuild what we had. And we went round and round and round with them. And they shorted us about $200,000 to what it's going to take. So with the place that we bought, we're going to have to put $200,000 of our own money in. But you know, how much were we going to spend on lawyer fees and lose? You know, I've got 4 kids and already losing $80,000. That's one kid going to college. So we decided, you know, we're going to take what we can. We can't afford to continue this fight. If I did, I would have fought it to the very end.
Can you imagine owing $100,000 or something on a piece of property, it being taken away from you, you coming away with nothing and still owing $100,000?
They didn't care.
Like when I look at days taken off work, trips to Hanford, lawyer fees, the appraisal, and then a possible property tax increase, I'm looking at like $115,000 that we were sacrificing
For 1 year.
for
A
1
period
year.
of time.
Yeah.
We're,
And how long did this process take?
When did they start? 2011, and then we were finally kicked out in 2017. So 5 or 6 years, a battle with them.
It's 2018. I've known where this alignment has been going to go since 2010. For 8 years, I'm still dealing with the scenario.
Once they buy your property, if you're not, because their negotiation, they'll 2-week you to death. Oh, you'll get your money 2 weeks. Okay, where's my money? Oh, well, you know, this happened 2 weeks. Everything is they will 2-week you to death. So in the meantime, you are renting your property back from them. What they call fair market value.
You're paying the High-Speed Rail Authority?
You're renting your property back from High Speed Rail.
Till you move out.
Until you move out. My sister had a mortgage on her next door property, which it was all paid off, and she was paying rent to them according to what her mortgage was. And I'm looking at them, I'm saying, I don't have a mortgage. I don't know, why am I paying you anything? You know, but we still negotiated a rent with them.
And how long did this go on? From the time that you knew that your house was in jeopardy to the time that you got the money that was promised to you?
2 years?
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
2 years.
Because we were down there in 2012, I think.
We've only been here a year.
So
Year
what
in
do you do
October.
for 2 years? I mean, how do you feel living in like a state of...
When's it gonna end? When is this nightmare gonna end? When am I gonna get these people out of my hair and off my back? When is this flipping nightmare going to end?
What's happened since then is they didn't need his house at all.
Right,
Because the alignment has been moved.
so many times.
See, so that they forced people out of their houses. Some of them they still need, but ultimately some of them they never needed their house.
So we're on this road in Corcoran. Reminds me a lot of kind of the Wheatland and Wentworth area of Shadow Hills. Some nice houses and a little bit of acreage with animals. And yet we're in the middle of this construction zone. And this swath of land right here is where the train is going to come through. This guy right here, who has a few acres with these sheep and chickens, and his house is right here, his property was not taken by high-speed rail. Here's the train route. And yet, on the other side of the street, that yellow house right there was taken by high-speed rail, and here's the overpass that they're working on building right now, which is where the train will cross this existing road. So these folks get to live right next to that. House was considered not affected by this project.
We've told them, if you build an overpass right in front of the front door of our house isn't worth anything anymore on that property. They're saying, no, don't worry about it because it's out of the footprint of the overpass. So now the overpass, as they build the overpass, takes up half of the front yard of the house. So we've reached a point where we said, screw it, the house, they won't take the house.
These houses were just condemned in the last 6 months. The houses that you're seeing, though, on the other side of the street, been condemned for up to 2 years. This brown house, log cabin you're looking at right now, was why the people were moving out under direct orders by the rail. Scavengers were coming in before they even left.
And this house here that's right behind,
That's staying.
that's staying. So those people get,
There's money there. I forgot the name of the word they use. They've got a word for them. They may compensate them because they're in the sphere of influence.
But that has to be negotiated.
And that's down the road and so on and so forth.
So those people are in limbo also.
So
this was Aaron's house here.
This was Aaron Faguta's house.
And this house next door, which is, 50 feet away,
Not a problem.
not affected by something.
At this time.
And you said what used to be right here where there's nothing now.
There used to be homes right there. They were an acre and a half, 2 acre homes. And they came in almost 2.5 years ago and knocked them down. I was here the day, I was out here watching them knock the houses down. It was disgusting.
Finally, we got security out there 24/7. Because they were just breaking into those places something awful. I mean, I was gone 3 days and they broke into my house.
It became a magnet for people who were trying to scrap out houses
Tweakers.
for methamphetamine
Yeah,
recycling,
yeah. It was just,
which
well, they had broken into Roby's barn twice, and he still lived there.
which is the next part of the component. When they take stuff out of your neighborhood, like take Charlene's house out of your neighborhood, that doesn't mean that there's nobody left nearby. And so when the tweakers come in to start scrap metaling and stealing stuff because nobody's living there, it starts affecting everybody that lives around there because their stuff starts getting taken.
The burglary and vandalism taking place at Charlene's former home was so rampant and so destructive to the neighbors who were still nearby. The city asked permission from high-speed rail to burn down the home, to use it as firefighting practice. The fire chief asked Charlene if she wanted to light the match, and she said yes.
Because that was a real hard day in my life, being there, gonna watch my house burn. You know, but I wanted to be there because I wanted the closure, but I wanted to do it like for Michelle and Gary and the Robys, the ones that were left there that were really being affected by the elements that were going there doing all this crap. You know, I really wanted, but I wish they did burn it all down, but they didn't.
And how did it feel to watch it?
I cried. I really did, I cried. But what can you do? It's gone. I don't know. Still bothers me today, but it's gone. They're just like inmates in a prison. If their mouth's moving, they're lying. They'll tell you anything you want to hear. You know, so you have to be real careful with them. And don't take, just remember, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. Doesn't mean that's what they're going to do.
It wears on you, and it's real hard to work for something that you think you own, and then them be able to take it away from you and not have to compensate you for it, and not have to give you, you know, what it takes to replace it. So it was hard on us. I actually did go into some counseling, and it's just real draining, and that's what they do. They wear you down. They just keep going, and you finally run out of money, or run out of time, or run out of sanity or patience. And
you guys will only know what I'm going through and what he has called his footsteps, like his grandmother's garden, his family's homes. It's hard, but you've got to deal with these people because they don't care. They could care less, but they're going to get what they want. Bottom line, they're going to get what they want. You know, so the thing is, be strong, stand your ground, and at least try to get what you want. You know, because in the bottom line is, they're going to get what they want.
Is that sobering? Is that a wake-up call? I had some closing comments, but we're really behind time, so I'll just say I'm going to be here at the end if anybody has questions. I spent 8 hours touring with these folks. Yeah. It's real quick, but it's important. It's so important, you guys. Okay. You know, it's hard to condense 8 hours of footage into something short and really highlight it, but I just want to make sure, I know some of it was hard to hear, that you guys got these kind of takeaways from it. On average, high-speed rail offered homeowners in the Central Valley between 25% and 33% of fair market value for their properties. They only look at the basics of a house. Does it have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths? They do not take into account anything that might be valuable to your property. Do you have acreage? Do you have a barn? Do you have a pool? Because none of those things matter to high-speed rail. They're going to tear it all down. They don't care. So they don't look at anything that might be of value of your house to a real buyer. The process takes, number 2, the process takes longer than you think. Some of the folks I talked to have known since 2010 and 2011 that their properties were going to be taken. They have yet to receive money from high-speed rail. They have been fighting to get a fair price and actually get their money for 7 years. I don't know if you could hear what the one woman said when she calculated how much money she spent just in a year before she gave up. In that year, $80,000 was on legal fees. The rest of her incidental stuff, it came to $115,000 in 1 year of fighting. And she said, you know what, I've got 4 kids. That's a college tuition. I can't keep doing this. In the meantime, for all this time, when you're living in limbo, you may be paying high-speed rail to rent your own property back from them until you get your settlement money and can afford to buy another house. If you currently have a mortgage and they give you less fair market value and you still owe money on that mortgage, you still owe money on that mortgage. You lost your house, they took it from you, and you still owe money on that mortgage, on a house that you no longer have. If you want to stay in the area, which a lot of these folks did for reasons that we might want to stay around here, suddenly you've got hundreds of people who are displaced, who are all looking for a place to live. If you own horse property and you get displaced, how many horse properties are available for hundreds of people to buy to remain in this area? Everyone is competing for the same few properties that are on the market. High-speed rail takes properties it doesn't need, and vice versa. So I'm looking at these houses and thinking, is it better to have your house taken and get some money for it, or have your house not taken, and this guy has an overpass sitting taking up half of his front yard, where a train is gonna go by every 5 minutes, however many hours of the day. Which situation is worse? I don't know the answer. The blight in our neighborhoods will last for years as properties are taken and boarded up and the project lingers on with no construction. Those houses that have been boarded up, some of those have been sitting there boarded up for 3 years. You think we have a problem with the homeless now? The homeless and tweakers will gravitate to condemned and abandoned houses, number 1, to scavenge them for scrap metal and anything they can take, a place to live, et cetera, et cetera. And that creates a nightmare for the homeowners that are left behind still living in that neighborhood. This is an important one that I didn't know. High-speed rail follows a rule that's called the 15%, 85% rule. What that means is that their routes are approved when only 15% of the route is planned. When they approve an EIR, they approve 100% of the project, even though only 15% is planned. The other 85% of the planning doesn't come in until they hire a design firm to come in and actually look at the specifics. This is why when you see some of these places that they no longer lead, they were in an original thing and they kicked those people out. They said, we need your house right now. But then when the designers actually came in to design where it's going to go, oh, well, now it's shifted here, now it's shifted there. One of these places, there's a 5-mile stretch that was never in the original project. And these people said, well, shouldn't this 5 miles be subject to a new EIR or environmental review? It's 5 miles that was never in the original plans. And they said, no, it just deviates slightly from the original thing that was proposed. So I learned a lot. It was scarier than I imagined, but I hope that as we're fighting and we're asking you to do things and be involved, this is why it's so important that none of these alignments can be approved and why we have to stop it before they do this, because our community can't face these things that these people have endured. We can't. Thank you.
I hope you appreciate the sacrifice that Kelly went to learn all of that. She condensed, appreciate that. She condensed 8 hours of film into about 4 hours of film right there. But you know, we have friends up in the Central Valley there, Frank Oliveira and Alan Scott. When we had a big meeting like this for the business community, Frank Oliveira came down, and he was at the beginning stages of his eminent domain and property loss. Whenever we asked for anything from those folks up there, they couldn't give more. I mean, they would have taken Kelly for 2 days, 3 days, and shown her everything. They are aligned with us. We do our best to help them. And part of the inspiration for this story in particular was the Los Angeles Times. And there's a reporter there named Ralph Vardabedian. And I don't know if Ralph is still here, but he is a bulldog, and he's in the LA Times, and he's the one who's done all the stories about the fiscal issues, the budget overruns. We're in touch with, I texted Ralph at about 11:30 last night, and he said, "Can't you text me in the morning?" I said, "Why don't you turn your phone off?" And then he and I are having a conversation at 11:30 at night. But anyway, there's a lot of people, a lot of good eyeballs and a lot of good brains on this project, but you can see how hard it is. Like the woman Charlene kept saying, they're gonna get their way. They're gonna get their way once they get their hooks into you. Their hooks are not into us yet, but their hooks are getting close. They're a couple of years away from finishing environmental studies, and then stuff can start to happen. So to anyone in the community who thinks it's not wise to be involved now, you don't need to be involved right now, put it on the back burner. You see all these signs around the stage. These are signs that our volunteers painted when we did press conferences, when we did the trip down to LA to the board meeting. They're all stored in our garage, but we're gonna need this stuff again, and we're gonna need you guys again. This is not over, and as Dale Gibson says, whenever you're in a fight, don't turn your back. Because these guys, they are acting like they're on a mission. And they, even though they're running out of money, they got billions to spend before they're really out of money. It's right. This is all happening with your tax dollars. Thank you very much. The only thing I want you to take from this slide is the top lines in red. What would it be if they were at full operation right here in the Northeast San Fernando Valley? 220-mile-per-hour trains every 5 minutes from 5 in the morning until midnight. It's over 200 trains a day. That's what their full build-out plan consists of. It's bizarre. It's just bizarre.